Welcome to year 3 of the Funding Love podcast with Mal and Kate. We are two adoptive moms that seek to love, support, and elevate all corners of the adoption triad while running our nonprofit Funding Love.
In year 3, we will be talking all about parenting, Disney, adoption, and more with an all-star lineup of incredible guests, both inside and outside the adoption community.
So grab your favorite beverage and pull up a chair,
because everyone has a seat at our table.
Together, we are Funding Love,
the podcast. Hello and welcome back to episode 114 of the Funding Love podcast. I am, of course, with my co-host Mal. Mal, good to see you, of course.
Good to see you as always, Caitlin. I am excited for today's episode. We have a returning guest with us today, but she also has her daughter with her, and they host their own podcast. She has been a mentor in my life, and so I'm really excited to introduce our guest today.
Yes, let's go ahead and intro him. I'm excited for everybody to get to meet him.
Yes, so today we have returning guest Karen Stubbs with her daughter Emily. Together they co-host the Birds on a Wire podcast, and Birds on a Wire is a women's ministry. So welcome, Karen and Emily.
Thank you.
Hey
we're so excited to be here.
Yay! We're so excited to have you guys. I know our listeners got so much from our episode with you, Karen, as did I, because I was still I consider myself a young mom. My oldest is 4, and I learned so much from that personality episode, the colors that we did.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, that was so awesome. So I'm excited that you have your daughter here, because we're talking about a really cool topic that is important to me, Mallory, I know you too, is the faith of our little ones. Like, how do we foster that? How do we encourage that? Because they're so, at least I know as a Christian mom myself, that it's a worry of mine to say, am I doing everything the right way? And am I leading them in the right direction, saying the right things, not saying too much, right? All of those things. So I'm excited to talk about this topic with you two. So let me just jump right in, because all of us here, all 4 of us here, are Christian moms.
Yes.
And just like I was saying, our greatest wish is that our children will grow to desire to know and love and follow Jesus for all of their days. So how would you, I'm going to ask both of you, but so you can answer either one of you, how would you encourage your little ones on their own faith journey? I guess I have a 4-year-old, so that's where I am in my life, but we have moms and parents really from all walks. So what would you guys say?
Well, why don't I'll start, and then Emily has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So that would be good to sort of let y'all know what she's doing with that generation. So all mine are grown now, but whenever they were young, I think they're easiest when they're little, because, childlike hearts, and they're just they believe. The faith of a child is so amazing. And, you just start telling them, like, Jesus loves you. Obviously, you go to church. Or not obviously, we always went to church with our kids and brought them up in Sunday school and all that. And then at night, we'd say our prayers. We'd pray at dinner time, and even throughout your day, like while you're, cooking and doing things. My kids would always be like, if I was making a meal for someone that had just had a baby, I'd be like, they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm making our friend a chicken pot pie because she just had a baby. Why are you doing that? Well, because this is a way I can show Jesus's love to them. I would try to incorporate Jesus and God into our everyday conversations. If they would lose something, Mommy, where's my shoes? I don't know. Have you looked for it? Yes. And I'm like, I would always pray and ask Jesus, where are my shoes? Show me. And, it's funny because one time, do you remember this? We were in Disney.
Oh, I do remember this.
And Emily was 4. And we got at Disney Springs, and we got off the bus, and Greg said, I was taking all the kids to the bathroom, and he said, where's my backpack? And I said, I don't know. It's your backpack. I haven't held it, haven't touched it.
It's not mine.
Yeah. Everything was in that bag. His camera, the money, the SeaWorld tickets, the Disney tickets, everything. And we're standing there just at the sheer, oh my gosh, what's happening? And our little 4-year-old Emily said, when I lose something, you tell me to pray. And I was like, And in the moment, I was like, "Oh, my Lord, this is not the time to pray." And I said, "You're right, Emily. It is. That's exactly what we should do." So Greg was just looking at me like I had 5 heads, and I'm like, "Jesus, please show us where Daddy's backpack is." Well, the bus had driven off, and it was he went and talked to the people, and they said it'll be an hour before it comes back. So I told Greg, "I'm going to the Disney store. I'm just gonna look around." He goes, "You're gonna go shopping." And I'm like, "What else are we gonna do? Stand here?" So anyways, the bus came back around an hour later. We were there. The backpack was still in the thing. Everything was in it. And Emily said, "Jesus answered our prayers." And I was like, "Yes, he did." So
Nice.
just like that, just like bringing God into your everyday conversation and not just being a Sunday topic. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
How about
Mhm.
you
No.
with yours?
I think for me, what's something I learned from you is just to lead by example. Like, in the morning when I'm drinking my coffee, Harper's like, "Can you play?" I was like, "No, I'm talking to Jesus right now." And she's like, "I want to talk to Jesus." All right, well, let's talk to Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm journaling my thing, and she knows like when mommy has her journal out, that's not mommy's time to play. So I think leading by example and just showing her like it's important for me to have my time with Jesus. And it's like, your time with Jesus is to talk to him, and then she is so inquisitive. My 5-year-old is so inquisitive, and I have to make sure that I make time to answer those questions. Well, like, where is Jesus? Why are you talking to him? What are you talking to him about? And like
Mm.
in the morning, I'm like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation. And I'm like, okay, all right, Emily, focus. You can do this. So I think it's just leading by example. And we do go to church on Sundays, but
What is the do y'all read the storybook Bible at
we do
night?
read we have like
Oh, yeah.
a daily devotional that we have that we read, and it's what's funny, it's kind of like your devotional. It's like a story and then a verse and then
Yeah.
a prayer, and it's
Mhm.
basically for kids, but it's
Yeah.
really sweet, and that is important, and Harper and Grayson have loved to do that in our daily routine. I'm going to be honest with you. There's some nights where I'm like, we're not doing this tonight. We're going to
Yep.
bed. But I think I think for me personally, it's just making time to answer those questions if she has any, because she has a lot of questions. And then just my daily walk with Jesus, and then they can see that. But then also, like, if something comes up, like, and they're not acting nice, then I don't all the time do this, but I try to pull it back to Jesus. Hey, Jesus shows us that we need to treat others the way we want to be treated. Are you doing that to your sister? Grayson, are you doing that to your sister? And blah, 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 blah. Like, I feel like
Mhm.
it's just in daily conversations. It's not like, all right, at this time we're going to do this,
Right.
because I think my 5-year-old Harper would be like, I'm not doing that. So, I think
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
kind of leading by example.
Mhm.
That's so true, and I think you're right about just the small moments and
Mhm.
where we see God reminding our little ones that that is God. Like
Yeah.
in the mornings when we see the sunrise, oh, thank you God for another beautiful day.
Yeah.
God made that sunrise, Libby, isn't that beautiful? And remind her that all of that is from God, and to let her, because kids are so imaginative anyways, and to
Yes.
let her
Absolutely.
wonder about the grandeur of God as a little kid. I think those are some cool moments that I have. And then I hear her say the same thing to me as well. Mom, thank God for another beautiful day. Isn't it great? It is great. Yes. Um,
She is like
uh,
the most positive little girl ever.
oh my gosh. Going back, Karen, to the colors, when we did that episode, Libby was, gosh, it was over a year ago. So she was like newly 3. So,
Right.
she's still becoming herself, but now she's like a solid 4.5-year-old. And I'm telling you, the yellow, I think it's written for her, because when I had to reference that book the other day because I felt like
Yeah.
I wasn't doing something right with her. And I was like, I don't know. They literally wrote this about Libby because everything is driven by fun. And if there's no fun, there's
They
not
don't
doing
wanna
it.
do it. That's
Not
right.
doing it. Yeah.
That's
And
exactly
it's
right.
even her outfits and cleaning up and all of the things. It's just not fun, Mom. I don't understand why we have to do it.
Right.
So
Mhm.
anyway, so I think that even plays into how we teach our kiddos
Mhm.
about Jesus, is
100%.
knowing who they are and how they're
Well,
made
Mhm.
up
yeah,
and how
and,
they
like,
tick.
my oldest, Kelsey, was into music from 2 years old on, and, worship music was really a way, especially as she got older into middle school and high school, it was a way that, she would really connect with God, so just paying attention to those kinds of things, and, if I heard a great worship song, I'd say, "Hey, Kelsey, this is a really great song," and then I'd hear it playing in her room over and over and over again, and, it's just Emily's always liked to journal. So just paying attention to those types of things and then working towards their temperament, to point God out in those
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. And I love the way that you're pointing out how to lead them in like the positive moments to Jesus, like, oh, the
Mhm.
sun, or I'm talking to Jesus in the morning. Because I feel like as a mom, especially in those discipline years, like we're kind of coming out of those. My kids are 8, 10, 12, and 13 right now.
Right.
And like, so we're coming more into like the teaching years, the coaching years with my
Mhm.
oldest. And but in those discipline years, it was so easy for me to fall into like, I only brought it up when I was disciplining. Like,
Right.
well, Jesus says we shouldn't treat people that way. Well, Jesus says you shouldn't hit people. Well, the Bible says, or God, or like, and I think that sometimes when we're caught up in those discipline years where it's just hard because you feel like you're disciplining all day long,
Mhm.
Yes.
to remember to still bring into like, wow, this dinner is so yummy. Doesn't God make the best food? God,
Yes.
grows the best apples or whatever,
Mhm.
and being able to remember to tie in the positive so that it doesn't just come to like God's this ultimate rule keeper that teaches
Yeah.
me how to keep the rules.
Mhm.
That's exactly right. And going back to the temperaments, some of my kids were more serious. And whenever I did that, Mal, what you're talking about, God says this, or they started like he was a punishing God and he
Mhm.
was mean, and
Right.
he does discipline us, but he's not ever mean. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so I was like, I need to stop that. Like, this
Yes.
is hurting, I think, their little hearts. And I don't need to be like stressing all of this with them all the time. But,
Mhm.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And I
Yeah.
think I think Emily, that you brought up that your children are seeing you every morning do your
Mhm.
your journal and your Bible time, and I think that's so important. But I also feel like adding on to that is, as moms and dads, are the importance of truly being in the Word, because
Oh, yeah.
when we're talking about disciplining and bringing our children up in the way of the Lord, you need to have that in you in order to do that.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
I feel like that is so key, because if I'm not doing that daily and they're annoying me and there's just pressing me and pressing me and pressing me and pressing me, and my temper just lets go, and then I discipline in this like crazy maniac sort of way,
Sure.
then I'm not representing Jesus either, and teaching them how, the right way. So I feel like constantly having that in my heart and my mind as well is so important. And you can
Mhm.
tell when you don't. I can tell when I don't,
Of course.
when
Yeah.
I
I've fallen away.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think we have a common thread between all of us moms is we're all Christian moms, but we also have traveling husbands. So a
Yeah.
lot of times we're doing it by ourselves.
And
And
it's
then
hard.
it's hard. And I have to really be in the word and being like, God, because I want my words to be sweet about Brian too, talking about my kids.
Mhm.
Like if he's at a nice restaurant, I can't be like, well, daddy's here. Like, I'm like, guys, I need to have a good heart. Like, guys, look at this fun place that daddy is today. And we're eating at the house. But, that's not a bad thing. But you know what I mean? Like sometimes
Yeah.
you got to get your heart right. So because it affects
Oh
there was with
gosh.
Brian traveling a lot. I'm like, oh, if I'm not in the word, then man, it's gonna be a long week because
Oh
it's just
yeah.
it's just hard.
Oh, don't I know, when my husband is in Disney and then on a cruise, and I'm thinking to myself, and
Yeah.
Libby's like, "Where's Daddy?" Well, he's on a cruise in the middle of the ocean having a great time, but I
Yeah.
gotta watch myself. You're right, Emily.
Yeah.
Daddy's working. He's on a cruise. He's doing
Yeah.
great work.
Mhm.
That sort of
Mhm.
thing. You're absolutely right. Oh man, is that hard? Oh boy,
Yeah.
is that hard.
It is really hard.
And we all
Oh,
have it in common too.
yeah, we sure do. Mel, so we've kind of talked about, Emily and I, like the little kids, of talking about those little things, like, oh, seeing God in the sunrise, and, praying for our meals, and being, what are we thankful for each day, right? But
Mhm.
you're at a different spot raising your kids. Like,
Mhm.
Jack's 13, almost 14.
Yes.
So how are those conversations? Like, are you still finding new ways to engage him in his faith, or is it now just kind of letting him go and encouraging him? Like, where are you with that?
Yeah, it's been really cool for me. And I know, Karen, you could probably pipe in on this, just having raised kids into adulthood, to kind of move from those little devotionals that we used to use to
Right.
like just reading the word with them.
Mhm.
So our 12 and 13, almost 14, he'll be 14 in like a couple weeks. I cannot believe that. Um, they have started actually doing the Bible recap with Terry Copple, like actually
Yeah.
like reading the Bible with us every day. And it has either a video you can watch or a podcast podcast you can listen to that explains what they read, which is really helpful. But like actually this is the first year that they're actually reading the word, and we all know there's like really hard and
Mhm.
graphic and scary and gross stuff in the Bible. But it's been really cool to kind of just move straight to the word with them and just have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like we found some really great resources too that has helped us with that. Like Karen, I don't know if I'm sure you do, like the book The Talk, when
Mhm.
you're talking to your kids about sex, but it puts it in like a godly way. So I
Right.
feel like talking about the things that you would normally talk about with a preteen or a
Mhm.
teenager, but then adding that layer of God on. And so we found some good resources that have been helpful, and I'm really enjoying it. If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
teen years are kind of fun for me because I
They
like
were.
having the deep conversations. That's just like my personality.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more fun than intimidating, but I think that's the biggest shift I see is that we're getting down to like the real nitty gritty word instead of like, the Daniel and the lion story with a cute bow.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, and they also, as the older they get into some really hard questions, like,
Mhm.
because, um, they start noticing families around them might be going through divorce, or grandparents might be getting sick with cancer or whatever. So even I know some of mine had a friend that, was very sick in high school, and they did not understand that. Like, why would God allow this to happen? And so those are questions that sometimes as parents we can be like, "Ooh, I don't want to talk about that." But you do need to talk about that, because I
Mm-hmm.
used to always tell my kids, like, I don't know why God allows it to happen, but I do know at the end of the day, God is a good God. And we only see this world. That's all we see. But God sees the whole picture.
Mm.
And even whenever someone dies, we are sad, but if they're a Christian, they're with God in heaven. So they are not in any more pain. And we talked about that with grandparents dying and things like that. Grandmother is in heaven with Jesus now, and she lived a great life, and she wouldn't want you to be sad. Like, and you're going to get to see her again one day because you're a Christian, and one day you'll go to heaven. And then well, I don't want to go right now. Well, you don't have to go right now, kind of thing. But all those kinds of things, and even as teenagers, whenever they're trying to go that narrow path in high school and make wise choices and all that, friends don't like that if they're not doing it, and they push back on them and make fun of them and all that kind of stuff. And I used to just tell my kids, like, I know this is hard. This is exactly what Jesus went through whenever people were persecuting him, and we have to just stay to this narrow road because there is a blessing for it in the end. And Jesus doesn't just want us to not do these things because he doesn't want us to have a good time. It's because it's going to bring us, baggage and sorrow in the long run. Like, you'll be
Mm-hmm.
guilty for your just choices, whatever. I don't know.
You'll totally
Does that make
regret it.
sense?
You'll totally
Yeah,
regret it.
Regret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. They do. And so, and like with my girls and, son and all, I used to say the reason God doesn't want you to have sex before you get married is because it's a beautiful thing that should just be shared between you and your husband or you and your wife. And he doesn't want to punish you. He wants to bless you. And that's a
Right.
good thing. So don't,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to be like, Debbie Downer over here, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yep.
think
Yep.
one thing that I have gleaned from you, over the years of just learning from you, Karen, too, was
mhm.
you always said, like, be honest and truthful with your kids
Yeah.
and that you wanted them to hear it from you first. I always loved that too, so that they could say, well, yeah, I've talked about that with my mom, or yeah, I know
Right.
about that. And I always loved that because I feel like sometimes parents want to tiptoe around the hard conversations, whether
Mhm.
that's sex or a hard friendship or death. And I think that being able to be honest at an age appropriate level, but
Right.
Mm.
so that they know that mom has always told me the truth. Like she
Yes.
might not have told me everything all at once, but she always told me the truth. And I
That's
think that
right.
that's super important when it comes to faith too.
Absolutely, and even whenever you don't know the answer, because sometimes they ask you some questions that and I used to just say, "Hey, I don't know that answer, but I'm
Right.
gonna start digging in my Bible, and I'm gonna start talking to the pastor and other people and find out, and whenever I figure it out, I'll let you know."
Yeah.
Because, they want to know the hard things, and if you don't give them an answer, they're gonna keep they're going to keep searching until they find something. And I don't want them to be filling up their minds with stuff that's
Oh
not
gosh,
good.
no.
You
Yeah.
Right.
know?
I
Yeah.
think something you did really well as like you're saying age appropriate, you know what I mean, Mallory? I think the older we got, we would ask questions and you never were like, "Oh my goodness, why are you asking me that
Yeah.
question?" You were calm and it allowed us to have a safe place to ask
Mm.
those questions.
I love
Even in
that.
the inside, I'm sure you're like, "Why are you asking those questions?" But like you never let us feel that because you wanted us to be a safe person to come to you. And a lot of times you're like, "Let me think about that." And you would take a moment to compose yourself
Yeah.
and get back
Had some
so
doozies, let me tell you.
so, you know,
Yeah,
When
some
you say ask me anything, they take it
we're like,
seriously.
"Yes,
Like,
let's do it."
whoa, okay.
gosh, but
Yeah.
Karen, I mean, that is so what you want. Like, bring all of the awkward and weird questions to me because, like you said, I don't want them asking somebody else who you don't know how they're going
Right.
to guide them or what they're going to tell them or what mindset they're going to put them on. Like that is the scariest thing to me is,
Mhm.
and that is like what I pray for the most is that there is a safe space and that
Yeah.
Mhm.
for my
Mhm.
children to come to me with those questions. But I have a funny story when we're talking about, death and our kids understanding death and heaven and having those conversations. Gosh, Libby was, I guess, a year ago, maybe 3.5 or so. Our friend's dog died. And they were very sad. The dog was a big part of their family, of course. And Libby helped me pick out flowers. It was great. She goes, "Mom, why are we picking out flowers?" I said, "Well, our friend's dog died, and so he went to heaven. It was his time to go to heaven, but they're very sad. They're very sad." She goes, "Wait, but that's exciting, Mom. That's
Oh,
exciting." And I was
that's
like,
sweet.
"Oh, you're right. That is exciting for
That's right.
Saxon, but we're a little bit sad,
That's
But
right.
that is like the childlike faith where you're like, man, as an adult, if none of us were jaded, that is exciting, right? That is
Exactly.
great.
Exactly. I
So
know.
that was
That's
sweet,
really
but
That's a
sweet.
cute
I
story. I
love
love
that.
that.
I love that. But I do love that we have different in this conversation because Mal talking about teenage kids, like I'm nowhere near that in my head, and even like talking about faith when it comes to that. And then Karen, you've raised kids to adulthood now.
Yes.
So my question for you then is we have because of what we're talking about faith and all of us
Mhm.
have that worry of are we doing it right, are we doing enough, have I missed something, am I pressing too hard, am I pushing my agenda on them, am I allowing them to think for themselves, all of those things. What would you say to encourage a mom and dad right now with all of those thoughts and all of those concerns and feelings and worries?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's just the biggest decision your child makes,
Yeah.
honestly, in their life. And what always gave me comfort is no matter if I miss the mark, you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
doing it the best I can, but for whatever reason, I'm missing it. God is always pursuing our children, and He loves them more than we do. And there were seasons in all of my children's lives where they weren't necessarily walking with the Lord, or they were angry with Him for whatever reason. And I used to always pray, God, I need you to show up in their life. I need you to make yourself real to them. I know you love them. I know you're pursuing them. They're being a little stubborn right now. So just make yourself real to them. And it was always so cool how months would go by and they would come back and be like, this happened today. And I think that was God. And I'm like, yes, 100% that was God. So just always remind yourself that God loves them more than you do, and He's going to pursue them until the day they die. He's not
Yeah.
Mm.
going to give up on them. Sometimes we get frustrated
Mhm.
with our kids, and we're just like, just do it. I don't care. I'm so frustrated right now. We give up, but God never gives up on them ever.
Mhm.
And so, it's not on us
Mhm.
to make them have a relationship with God. He gives us all free will.
Mm.
And so we have to accept that as moms, that there's only so much we can do. We can lead a horse
Mhm.
to water, but we cannot make them drink. Their relationship is with God.
Mhm.
And one time we went on a mission trip. We went down to the lighthouse to serve, and Abby was a senior in high school, and they asked her to do a devotional on the trip to the students. So she came to me and she's like, do this devotional for me. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that for you. They asked you to do the devotional. They didn't ask me to do it. And she goes, Mom, you've written a whole devotional. And I said, I know. And I did my work for that. Like they're asking you to do it. It needs to be, what is God teaching you in your life right now? What is he showing you? And she didn't want to do the work. And I said, I'm not doing it for you. And because, as a teenager, she has to really sit, stop, slow down. What is God teaching me in my life? What am I struggling with? And she didn't want to answer those hard questions. But then whenever I didn't do it for her, it forced her to do it. And the devotion that she did was really good. I mean, when I didn't get in the way, didn't fix it, didn't do it, she had to really do some hard work and it was really good. And I told her that was a good job, you know?
Mhm.
She says,
Mhm.
well, I was so mad at you. And I said, I'm sure you were. And I'm
Hey.
sorry about that.
Yeah, there were lots of times, growing up, like, there was a lot of those, "You gotta do it yourself,"
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Mom, just tell me what to do," and she's like, "You need to go talk to God." I'm like, "I don't wanna talk to God. You're right here. You are
Yeah.
right here. Tell me what to do," and you wouldn't, and I'd get so frustrated with you, but I think you just were preparing us for the future because,
Mhm.
Well,
pushing
I
us
didn't
towards
know
God.
I may not always be around,
Yeah.
but God is
Mhm.
always around. And I used to tell my kids
Mhm.
that. Kelsey one time was giving this huge confession to me, and I was like, wow, I can't believe you just told me all that stuff. And I just said, I really appreciate you telling me all that. Have you told that to God? And she's like, well, no. I thought you could tell him. And I said, no, I'm sorry. It's between you and him. It's really not between you and me. Like
Mhm.
your fence is not against me. You didn't do anything to me. This was between you and him. And she's like,
Mhm.
ugh, he's going to be so mad, like what you were talking about earlier, Mallory. And I'm like, no,
Mhm.
he's not, because he's a loving father and he wants you to come to him.
Mhm.
And so you have to sort of push them, like, "Go
Mhm.
do it. You got
Yeah.
this."
Yeah, the thing that reminds me is that we as parents, like, we need to parent open-handed to God
Yes,
because we're not like you said, like, our kids' salvation doesn't hinge on us, it hinges on their
right.
trust in Jesus, and so it's, like, such a
That's kinda
reminder of,
comforting.
like
It's like,
yeah,
Yes.
of
just
we can only do what we can do, but really it's up to God and it's up to them, and that we are just stewarding them into
Mhm.
adulthood. They don't, like,
Right.
belong to us. We're not responsible for every choice they make. I remember you saying that too, Karen, when they're, like, toddlers and they're making poor choices and, like, as a
Yeah,
mom in public, you're like, "It's my fault." But, no, they're toddlers and they're making their
that's right.
choices. We just have to choose how to respond. And I love that because I feel like it's the same with their faith. And, like, when Emily was talking and sharing the story about, like, "Mom, you're right here. I want you to tell me," like, what a great model to be like, "God is right here too. Like, he's right
Yeah.
here."
Mhm.
Like, he
yeah.
is very real. Like, the Holy Spirit is very real, and just because we can't see it with our eyes doesn't mean that he's not right here too, and you're able to tap into that and to talk to him and to get those answers
Mhm.
straight from God. I think that is such a great model, and
And a great lesson
I'll
that
be
we
I'll
should
be using that
always
for sure in the next few years.
Yes.
Yeah, and a great lesson that we should go to him first with all of our concerns and fears
Yes.
and worries. And, even like you're teaching your kids this as young adults or teenagers. And then even as an adult, what a great reminder that when there's so much in life that you're like, gosh, I can't figure out, well, why don't I talk to God about it? Why am I trying to like manhandle everything in my life to
Exactly.
like into its place? And that's the same thing when we're teaching our kids how to get through life. You have
Mhm.
Jesus, and like what a great, how important, to
Mhm.
create that habit in them for it to be almost a reflex, like, oh, I don't know what to do. Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, yeah, so good. Emily, you've already given a little bit here, but I'm wondering, like, is there any other like fun things that you remember growing up that you are taking into your parenting that your mom instilled in you, or some habits or healthy things that she did to help you on your faith journey that you are doing now with your kiddos?
That's a great question. I think the first and foremost is mom did her quiet time every morning. Like she had her spot in our house, the house that basically our first Georgia house.
We grew up in.
Yeah, and I remember her every morning sitting in that chair, and I knew when she was in that chair, I was not allowed to talk to her, and I would be like, "Gosh, she's still doing her quiet time. Like, come on, mom, finish up." But I think that just instilled in me something that I always could. It was almost like I knew that was her routine, and I loved growing like, now I'm older, I'm like, I loved seeing that because it was such a constant reminder for me, and I wanna be that constant reminder for Harper and Grayson, like, this is where mommy starts her day, and this is important to me. And I think, as well as this might be a little bit more funny, but I remember mom blaring Christian music, in the bathroom, like, she'd be getting ready, and we had, like, those internal speakers in the bathroom,
Yeah.
and she'd just be, like, jam into music, like, on, like, max level at, like, 9 a.m. And, I know that sounds silly, but it really did worship music can totally change your attitude of the day.
Mhm.
And, I think that's something that, like, if we're having a hard time, I'm like, "All right, let's put on some faith music, let's crank it up, Alexa, let's go," and it does change our
Mhm.
whole mood as a family. So, I mean, those are 2 really small things, but big things that have a huge difference
No, I
in
love that.
my
Yeah,
walk with the Lord.
huge things that that your kids are seeing, and the quiet time I think is so cool because it also shows that it's okay for moms to have that time because
Yeah.
you feel like you have to get up and go, go, go. No, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's okay, mom, for you to pause and get
Mhm.
yourself right and have that moment with the Lord before you get into the crazy, because it would be much easier sometimes to just jump right into the crazy and get to the
Oh,
task
Mhm.
yeah.
list, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen,
Absolutely.
any final words for those parents in this journey? Anything else you'd want to leave them with?
Well, just don't give up on them. Prayer
Yeah.
is key,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
only God knows their heart. We can think we look and see what's in their heart, but only God can truly see their heart. So just
Mhm.
pray and ask him, you know, um, to help guide you as the mom. I did, for the listeners out there that have a preteen or teenage girl, I did write a devotional for teen girls called, will you hand me that,
Yeah, you
Emily?
get it.
I can't move, but Moments with God for teen girls. And just because when my
Aw.
girls were teenagers, they were really, there's just a lot that goes on in a girl's world. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yes, I do.
they had the little devotions like when they were little, and then like older adult devotions, but nothing really in a teen world that really addressed their stuff. So
Mhm.
whenever I started Birds on a Wire, this is actually brand new. I just thought, I want to do something for teen
I don't
girls.
think you actually showed him the book. I think
I,
you're just holding it.
I
There you go.
did.
Okay. Maybe
Oh,
you did.
I
I don't
thought
know.
I did.
We'll
Okay.
link it. We'll link it in our show
Yes,
notes
we
too.
sure
So
will.
Yeah, but what I do love about this, and the publisher really pushed me on this. We did like the regular devotion, like the scripture, the past, I mean, what I have to write, and then the prayer. But then we have reflection questions because, they're teenagers and they may not know how to get to whatever. So we just got, do you have a plan for your life, or do you feel like you don't have a clue as to what your future will look like? And then it gives them space to write out
yes.
their thoughts. And I don't know, when the publisher said, can we, do some reflection questions? I'm like, that is a great idea. And it will really help her sort of process her feelings because,
Mhm.
girls got all the feelings. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so what age bracket would you say that book is aiming
I
for?
have had moms with girls as young as 9 doing
Okay,
them,
Okay.
and they said they love them. So 9, I would say 9 to 18.
great. I
Okay.
love that.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
It's really
so
pretty too.
good.
It is, I can
Yeah, it
see
is
it's so
pretty.
beautiful. I love the pink.
Thanks.
Well, we are so grateful for both of you, for your hearts, for sharing your wisdom here on this podcast. And we want our listeners to know that you guys can listen to these two every week, right? Is it every week on the Wire Talk?
Yes,
Every
every
week on Wire
Tuesday.
Talk. Yep.
Every Tuesday. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they have an awesome podcast that they can continue to speak wisdom into moms and parents,
Thank
and
you.
it's great. So I listen regularly. I know Mal does. I know my friend Mackenzie does. She's the one who
Yes.
got me all hooked, and I know Mackenzie's good friends with you, Emily. But
Yeah.
you guys are awesome. So thank you for joining us,
You're
and
welcome.
It was
Thanks for
so
having us.
fun.
Yes.
absolutely, and thank you listeners for tuning in to this episode of the Funding Love Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Funding Love podcast. We are a crowd-funded nonprofit, which means that people like you can help make a lasting impact in the lives of adoptive families and birth moms. At Funding Love, we create post-adoption experiences that strengthen bonds, build community, and restore people. And when you partner with us, whether that is giving online, signing up to become a monthly donor, or simply buying merchandise from our shop, you are funding love.